On the 8th of October 1992, Rudolf Nureyev, the greatest dancer of his generation, was dying of AIDS. His last act was to stage La Bayadère, the ballet he danced in Paris as a young man before defecting from Russia in 1961. This is the story of his last 10 years at the Paris Opera Ballet and of his refusal to allow illness to interfere with the sustaining passion of his life, the dance.
There was opening night of Bayadère here at the Paris Opera. There was a lot of TV, a lot of newspapermen. Everybody was waiting.
The audience was very special because it was not usual audience. It was all the friends of Rudolf who came, like his whole life.
The Bayadère was more than a ballet for Rudolf and for everybody around. This is the idea that I love about Bayadère, that you have someone approaching death, who's dying, and instead of his death, gives this wonderful ballet.
He didn't like very much his childhood, his poor childhood. He was sitting, watching after the trains, Siberian trains which go to Moscow, and he dreamt that time will pass when some train will take me from this place to the big world.
At that time, I was Minister of Culture of my country, and I wanted to give to our national opera a new life, other purposes. And the ballet, the national ballet, was a good one, but there were many problems. To change the situation, we had to find a man or a woman who could be able to give new strongness to this ballet. For me, Nureyev was a sort of God, very far from Earth, and I was not sure that it could accept this proposal.
The Palais Garnier, which housed the Paris Opera, the Paris Opera Ballet, as you know, is a magnificently opulent, beautiful, La Belle Epoque building. It is cavernous, it's enormous, it is an incredible city within a city. And because it is a civil servant, semi-quasi-governmental environment, you have all these different warring camps and factions within the ballet, within the opera, within the overall administration. And of course, it is a living, breathing, artistic setting that when Rudolf landed, like the D-Day invasion at Normandy, no one at the Palais Garnier, at the Paris Opera administration, or down the street at the Ministry of Culture realized that this was a whirling dervish, whirlwind, typhoon, tornado, monsoon, and that he was going to change everything, which he proceeded to do.
So when he asked me to come and join the Paris Opera, to come and work here, my first reaction was, he must be out of his mind, because they all sounded as though they were monsters. There were some real horror stories of the teething troubles that he'd been having at the opera. which is inevitable given years and years of tradition and very stringent rules, union rules including. And it's always difficult to take this on board when you go somewhere else. You think that you can do everything as and when you want, and you can't. When I first came, he said, all you have to do with these people is love them. And it's absolutely true.
When he arrived, I think first people was very proud and also very frightened because everybody knew Rudolf Nureyev first as a dancer and second as a character.
Afraid. I was completely afraid because he was so volontaire. The way he was going to the bar, even if it was not a free place, he was just going, putting his hand on the bar and doing, first was a plie. And I was afraid because he was so strong.
He wasn't altogether very well received at first because he was always after people doing this is not the right way, this is not the right way, this is not the right way. I mean, from morning, from 10 o'clock in class until end of the day, it was no, 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 no.
Everybody knows that some bottles of tea were just flying in the studio. We say, oh, you remember I did that step wrong, and Rudolf said, wow, I am not happy, and something was flying.
Rudolf never discussed his reasons for accepting the position as artistic director in the Paris Opera, but it seemed to me a very natural progression. And I guess Paris seemed a logical place. I mean, he hadn't jumped over the barrier here. It seemed like it had gone full circle.
Décision de Nureyev a-t-elle une signification politique, sentimentale, voire même tout simplement artistique? On ne sait.
The day he defected, I remember it coming on the radio, and it was the leap to freedom, and it was so romantic, and it was this combination of the political leap and the dancer's leap, and you know what it did for Rudolf was it made him an international celebrity before he'd ever danced more than one night in the West.
He was truly the first superstar. I mean, he was bigger than Elvis. It's hard to believe that, but he was. He was bigger than the Beatles, and that legend continued right to the end of his life.
Rudolf was such an extraordinary person that just to be seen with him made you feel as extraordinary as he was. And this man, as I said, could walk into a room and change the atmosphere of a room just by entering.
He was so beautiful that when you were first in his presence, it was almost shocking.
He had something about him which the most straightest of men, if you watched him on stage or even in the street, you make the hair stand up on your arm.
To have been Rudolf Nureyev young and have every man and every woman in the ballet madly in love with you, and the ones who hated you guts drinking themselves to death because they couldn't stand that you had ever been born, to be that powerful in a large group of beautiful, gifted people. You couldn't believe it.
The look of the company changed very quickly. And the standard went like this. Suddenly went more up to date, more clear, less decorative, and more powerful.
He invented the Paris Opera Ballet. He discovered Sylvie Guillaume, who was a gymnast. I mean, he put her in the corps and then elevated her within very short order into étoile. He discovered Charles Jude, he discovered Manuel Legris, Laurent Hilaire, Elizabeth Platel, some of the greatest dancers of the 20th century.
Ah, yes. Très important, ça. Oui, c'est pas... Oui, c'est mieux. C'est juste...
I think that this period was really a dynamic period during which you could see a change and a progress. It was very exciting for many people, for the dancers, for Nureyev, for us, for the people who like choreography and dance.
After a few months of Rudolf being here, the audience suddenly realized that something was happening in this theater that they have never seen before, that this company could be one of the greatest in the world.
Rudolf bought this flat around 1983, just before he became artistic director of Paris Opera. And we cook a lot of risotto, we make a lot of party over there with a few friends. Well, it was very nice.
Rudolf's cooking abilities amounted to going to the kitchen with a frying pan and saying, "Rick, what I do with egg." He didn't actually know, the basics of kitchen.
Of making tea.
Of making tea or coffee. He didn't know what money was. It was all done for him, and all of a sudden to see Rudolf with a frying pan in the kitchen, a sort of kimono dressing gown, trying to, the eggs and to die for.
He had a lot of friends, but he was very lonely. He was very often in his flat, alone, watching television, videos and things. And he asked us around, like people like Patricia Ruan or Genia or myself, and he needed a lot of warmth, which he was not always getting. He was giving a lot, and I don't think he was getting back enough.
Define me what home is. Home, it is where somebody is waiting for you. Home was this theater, where somebody was waiting for me to do performance. The stage is a home.
Rudy, he was a gypsy. He had luggage ready to go anywhere, anytime. So there was one time to American tour, one time Japan tour, one time Italian tour, or Australia, or whatever.
He had a contract where he could be absent for 6 months. He was never absent for 6 months. I know that because we had sometimes to call him in the other end of the world at 3 o'clock in the morning to talk about casting or rehearsal or who would do this or who would do that. I mean, it was literally like this. But he would never leave us alone.
It is 7 minutes before the hour. Well, it was a spectacular evening last night for ballet at New York's Metropolitan Opera House. Nureyev sent the world of dance a-spinning.
In New York, and Americans absolutely adored him. And he would say, "Oh, it would be so nice if we could have a little dinner together. Would that be all right? Just a few people." And then phone would ring. "I just have another friend arriving. Could he come?" So there we are, another plate.
Rudolf was interested in, I think, escaping his humble beginnings, because he was essentially self-made, self-taught, coming from the Ural Mountains of the Russias, and from really not more than a peasant background, to achieve this international superstardom. And although he was, I believe, one of the richest artists of all time, he nonetheless, I think, was afraid that it was all a fantasy and was all going to be taken away from him. And so the Nureyev of the dance world and the Nureyev of his private life were two separate persons. And he lived many different lives in the heterosexual world and in the gay community.
He was homosexual. I mean, maybe he was bi, I don't know, but he was definitely homosexual. And he enjoyed it, and he enjoyed his sexuality, and he enjoyed his body. I mean, he was very proud of his body, and he had every reason to be. It was a beautiful body, and it had done him, proud during his life with what he was able to achieve in the dancing world. He loved the nightlife, and that didn't always include going to a lot of rich parties. Or if it did, he then went on somewhere else afterwards, to clubs or whatever.
You know, it's been almost 20 years since I've been in this building. It used to be a bathhouse that I managed for 7 years. Now, this was the stairway to paradise. This took you down to a sauna, to a steam room, to a swimming pool, but basically it took you down to the place you shed your towels, and that was extremely important in the bathhouse world. You could be a major celebrity. In here, you were safe. I don't know, frequent. Nureyev was, I guess, a frequent visitor. This is not to imply he was here every night, every week, but yeah, he did come, and he was not Nureyev when he walked through the door.
I think in a way celebrity did for him, if you'll forgive me, what sex did for him, which is it soothed him, it tantalized him, but it didn't save him from anything.
The first image when I met Rudolf for the first time, I remember I entered that apartment that I didn't know at that time, but I was going to go so often after. And Rudolf was sitting in his sofa. I was both excited and a little bit afraid, I have to say. He needed a doctor in France. I didn't push to become his doctor, because anyway, Rudolf was not the kind of person that you had to, you couldn't say, I'm going to push to stay, and no. I didn't do anything. And after 1 month, he called me back, and then we started to see each other again.
Rudolf came one day at the Paris Opera, and he said to me, I'm not so well. I am something to do with the examen. And 1 week after, he said, I have something. And I understand what, if he says that to me, I have to understand quickly, But after, we never spoke about that. He knows, I know. And
so he said to me, Luigi, I want to be very sick soon. And I said, Rudy, what you have? Well, I'm going to be very sick. And so I was thinking it was a cancer, but then I found out it was AIDS.
At that period, we knew very little about that disease, and we only thought that an average of 10% of people who developed the disease completely. So it was not yet something that important.
There were some rumors, but most people refused to believe and know, and of course they care and how are you and anything. But it was, we knew that he didn't want to speak about it, so people kept very quiet also.
I can't explain. All right, the illness was there, the situation was there, but Rudolf didn't talk about it, therefore I don't feel I should talk about it. Do you understand what I mean?
At that period, Rudolf was not very worried about what could happen in the future. He knew he had a problem that maybe will come someday, but he was strong enough to forget everything about that and concentrate on his work and on his creation.
He was self-contained, but you would have to be. He must have always been. How else could you just make that decision to leave your home, your country and everything? Not knowing what the future would hold. I mean, not a suitcase, nothing. Nothing. It's something that's impossible for us to visualize, isn't it? That you don't see your family ever again.
Rudy, your mother in a very bad shape, and maybe she will not live long. I thought over and over the text of my letter because I didn't want to involve Rudy in some troubles here.
It was for years and years and years trying to get there. And he was so very, very excited and also very frightened about the idea of going there and being trapped in a way and not be able to come back.
When it was announced that the plane from Paris is landed and the passenger will go to the gates second, all cameramen rushed to that gate. And I was in suspicions. My goodness, I thought maybe they will wait for Rudolf. And I asked one of cameramen, whom are you waiting from? And he asked me, Rudolf Nуреев. Oh my goodness, what shall I do? When Rudolf sailed up through a crowd, I could not go to him because there are a lot of men around him and everybody wants to take an interview. And I jumped into the air and I cried, Rudolf, I'm here. And he came to me and said to me very proudly, would you like to share my glory?
I'm happy to be here. I'm happy that I will go and see my mother.
How is she?
And my sisters. Well, she's not very well. And that's as much as I can say.
I have not seen him 28 years. And it was a very exciting moment. And I didn't know what to ask first. And I asked him, Rudy, how life is? How are you? And he said to me, oh, I'm okay. You see, I have all teeth in my mouth, and I don't use spectacles. And I said to him, Rudy, the whole life passed. And he said to me, not whole life, but maybe the best part.
Ну и волновалась, конечно, все-таки 26 лет не виделись. А стояли мы вот здесь, ждали, когда люди отсюда выйдут. А он, оказывается, вышел через зал базарный. И, в общем, он к нам со спины подошел. Ну, в общем, тут объятия, в общем, цветы. Ну, когда я приехала к нему в гостиницу за ним, мы поехали в эту квартиру к маме. Он хотел увидеть маму, мы приехали сюда. Но Рудольф расстроился, когда он увидел маму в таком состоянии. Она была очень больная, была она парализована. Она уже и не разговаривала. Потом мы немножко посидели и поехали. He thought that his mother did not recognize him. Is it real Rudik? It was only this sentence she pronounced when he had been there. He remembered all the surroundings, the places where he spent his childhood. It was very moving for him. Maybe he felt ashamed a little bit because she lived a very hard life, and he was a beloved son. She adored him, and I was told that Rudy very often cried after the performance because he wanted his mother would see his glory.
There was some problem with administration about his contract. He was becoming very difficult himself because he was getting very ill. And not very ill, but he could not dance very well anymore. That he realized that. So that made him very sour somewhere. And the dancers also maybe were not too close to him. He thought they were not thankful enough for what he'd done for the company. So he was a bit upset with this.
I don't know really what to say about the parasol. Difficult theater. Very. And Rudolph sometimes was call me and say, I leaving. But then he changed. Every time he decide to leave, he say, I go shopping, I spend a lot of money, and then, I calm down, I go back, start again. But I think at the end he did what he was having his mind.
I, the president of Colombia, don't want to do business with them anymore, and that's it. And I said, well, I guess Paul must have done that. We haven't heard anything, so he thinks that it's over and done with. And I said, look, Walter, we will do it. By the late 1980s, given the fact that I was not going to get a feature film for him and he would not give me the time for television, I said, what about theater? What about a play? What about a musical? And he said, well, I'd love to do something like Yul Brynner did. He said, I saw Brynner do The King and I. Why couldn't I do that? And I said, well, why not indeed?
He instantly hooked into the financial end of it and was curious how much money he would make. And when we discussed the money, he was quite comfortable about doing it.
I went out to the airport to get him to sign the contract, and for some reason, he didn't want to sign the contract. And I got him to sign. And he looked at me and he said, he handed me my pen back and he said, you son of a bitch. He said, you're making me sign this contract and I don't, I have to think about dancing now. And I said, you'll thank me later. And he did.
I was suspicious, to say the least, about why he would not allow the insurance doctor to do a blood test on him, or any doctor for that matter, because he insisted that we go to his doctor in Italy. We did ultimately receive a report on his blood scribbled in Italian on a piece of paper that said he was in full health.
In a way, yes, he was not the best custodian of his own gift. You see, the thing that kept Rudolph going when he shouldn't have gone anymore was the same passion that made him what he was to begin with. So you couldn't, in a way, say, oh, God, why doesn't he stop? It's obvious. He didn't stop because he couldn't. He loved it so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are invited to an audience with the king. Rudolf Nureyev, the most celebrated dancer of our lifetime in Rodgers and Hammerstein's The King and I. Also starring Liz Robertson as Anna. For the first time, see Nureyev command the stage in the show that commands your heart.
Rudolf loved performing, and his home was the theatre, I feel. And so as long as he could get into the theatre, I think it gave him a purpose. I don't think hiding his illness was a performance. It was just, the performance was a means of making the day go by, and it was the only way he wanted to spend the day.
We'd get in the limo, we'd stock up on some food, maybe some wine or some beer, and we'd travel more often than not into the dead of night to the next city. And I can't tell you the number of gasoline attendants that would get a glimpse of Rudolf Nureyev standing, you know, in the middle of a deserted highway at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and realizing who they were in the presence of.
At the time that Rudolf Nureyev was here, I had the pleasure, should I say, I was an usher here at the Playhouse Theater. We certainly knew that this was a legend coming into our theater. He was on stage every time that I came in. He was on a stage at the ballet bar, and he was on a cellular phone the whole time.
His heart wasn't in The King and I to the degree that I think the producers and certainly myself would have liked it. He was always thinking about the ballet, and there were numerous faxes flying to and from throughout the whole period of the tour. I think when he realized that he wasn't going to achieve what people hoped he was going to achieve in The King and I think he decided to give up. This is not for me. I find some other way of performing for my fans.
He got a really fairly good review in our local newspaper, and you know, he wasn't the best actor. I mean, this wasn't his forte, but he was very good, I thought.
The critics, for the most part, were unkind to him, but he made $1 million in the first year, and the audiences packed the houses. He had a standing ovation after every performance, whether it was a matinee or an evening show, whether it was a small city like Portland, Oregon, or a major city like Boston, Massachusetts. He never complained about his physical malady. He coped with it in an extraordinary way. On one hand, he realized that time was running out as there was no cure for AIDS, but he sped his life up so that his activities were increased. He conducted and he choreographed and he continued to dance.
It was really for him a reality, more real than life. You know, the dancers used to gather backstage when he was on stage, and they would weep because you could see how much he loved it. It was spiritual.
I saw ballet at the age of 6 first time, and of course I was flabbergasted, and I knew that's what I'm going to do. I remember when I came to the kindergarten next morning, there's one room with a crystal chandelier and parquet floor. I was dancing away. I knew without any doubt that dancer I'm to be, and that's what I'm going to do.
First, I have seen him on the Kiro stage when he was dancing, being pupil of the choreographic school in Leningrad. I was fascinated by his dancing.
And everybody said to me, "No, how talented you are." And finally something came, clicked in my mind that nobody's going to come and take me by hand and do or show me anything. I had to do it all myself. So that's what I was doing ever since.
Rudolf was out of himself with happiness because he dreamed to dance again on Kirov stage. He was at that time 53 years old, I believe, and he wanted to demonstrate that he is still a great dancer.
Of course, it was difficult. It was difficult for him. And here I understood that this man, he is between the life and the dream. He is between the life and the dream. And these two parts, they try to divide him. When you come in the country which you left near 20 years ago, it is not easy to dance. The small pupils asked me, "Marina, you always told us about his great jump, about his pirouettes, about all, but he could not do it now. He did not do as we imagined it." And I answered him so, "Children, you must not think now about his pirouettes. You must see how he's acting. Have you seen this character that he created? It was wonderful."
Когда поднялся занавес, я первые такты вообще не слышала, потому что начинаются мои движения. Я вообще не слышала, когда мне вступать, потому что шквал просто был овации.
We were standing and we applauded, and all of us cried, but it was fantastic evening.
Obviously, his contract was up for renewal, this we knew. But why it wasn't renewed, whether it was Rudolph's desire or whether it was some other person's desire, I really don't know. Rudolph was very philosophical. He just said, "I won't be here."
I still don't know why they push him out. Maybe because they find out he was ill. Maybe because political, maybe, I don't know, but the important thing for me, I think, Rudolph was very upset.
I don't know exactly when he became to be ill, but I don't know if there is a correlation between those situations.
Paris Opera, he changed a lot from the beginning, and he fight a lot. And then little by little, they took away the chair from him to give it to somebody else.
For me, it was not. I wanted he could stay, and he could, but I saw that it was not possible because it's not only for physical reasons. It was for personal and intimate reasons. I don't know exactly.
I think that Rudolph had exerted his will successfully over so many things. And I think what happened to him at the end really was, now for the first time, in so many areas, his will was not going to make the difference anymore.
He just believed that something would come and save the day, and he would continue. Because he believed in longevity. He thought he was going to live well into his 90s. We talked about that one time, and he thought he was going to be the grand old man of the ballet world.
Little by little, his muscles go away. Even if he was work very hard every day to make the muscles stay strong, but there was a big fight, the age and the AIDS. He was really sick. He had already the first operation in Vienna, and I remember he was very weak. We met in London, Heathrow Airport, and then we fly together to Melbourne. And I tried to help in every sense, Rudolph, because he does, I remember in the hotel room, he never want to go out, he never want to work, he doesn't want to do anything, he have no energy. But then in the afternoon, after bath, he find a way to become back a little, maybe 50% of Nureyev, go to the theater and make the performance.
His strength was not the same. His willpower was not the same. But what was in his mind and what he thought he regret not to have done, it was the Bayadère. And that was still at the back of his mind. And that's how I suppose we asked him to come back to do this Bayadère.
I had seen nothing at all of Bayadère. So I went to the Paris Opera one night and was laying on the sofa giving his instructions to the dancers, He could hardly move, but just with his hand, he used to say things like this.
It was hard because we could see Rudolph was very, very ill. Even now, I feel. And but what was good also is we did work very much, but the dancers were very with us.
He still had a lot to say, and he was there a lot, and the strength was still very evident in terms of what he desired to do, how he wanted this production to be.
I fly from Milano, and I went direct to Rudolph's apartment in Quai Voltaire. There was people fly from New York, from all his friends came here.
That day I had stopped my appointments earlier because I didn't want to be late. I took the subway to go to the opera because I didn't want to be late.
Rudolph was he didn't speak much at that period because he had a problem, to use the voice. So he didn't say nothing. So we drive from Quai Voltaire to Opera Garnier.
Rudolph was very tired at that moment. So he had to sit on the stairs of the lodge. And we were looking for the woman with the key to open the lodge. And she arrived, and she didn't recognize Rudolph. And she, in a mean way, said, "But what are you doing here?" And suddenly Rudolph looked at her and like a wounded beast with most incredible glands I ever seen. And I told the woman, but you know, you're talking to Mr. Nureyev, please.
He was in the room, in this box, just Rudy, myself, and Michel Canesi, the doctor. And everybody came to say hello to Rudy.
I had a strange feeling about all those people coming to say farewell, in a way, to Rudolf. I was behind him during the performance, and in a moment he asked me, Michel, could you take me in your arms, please? And so I spent maybe the whole act, the first act, holding Rudolf in my arms. And I couldn't move because after a moment I was uncomfortable, of course. You see, I couldn't feel my muscles and everything. And I thought to myself, look, all this pain that you have, keep it in your head, because this, you are living an historical moment. You have Rudolf in your arms, and this was a great, great moment.
We were all doing our best for him. It was, he gave us a wonderful gift, and we wanted to make him happy.
And then came the end of the performance. So we had the moment of choosing whether Rudolf would go on stage or not. So I remember I said, do you want to go on stage and see your public? And he said, yes, I have to do it, but let's make it quickly. So he went on stage, and this was one of the most incredible moments of Bayadère, because people suddenly realized how weak he was, and that it was probably the last time that they would see him on stage. So you had that incredible silence for maybe, I don't know, 10, 12, 15 seconds. It's long, you see, 15 seconds of silence.
I mean, I was happy for him. I mean, he was sick. I was holding him at this moment on stage. We went with him, holding him to do a boat together with my partner Isabel. And after you want to go alone. I mean, and he was, I mean, really sick. I mean, didn't move really easily. And then he started to go, and like shoulder goes like this, and he do few steps. And Hibo has Rudolf Nureyev has a big dancer. It was 10 seconds after he was falling, and then I took him, and it was I never forget this moment. It's not possible.
He was so noble, you understand? He was as a prince or as a king. It was probably the last presence of Nureyev on the stage of opera. And I give him this decoration, several words, but what was important was that he was consecrated by the love of people, by the love of dancers, by the spirit and the mind of the place.
He was very happy. Looked like he wanted to tell to everybody, this is the end. And he would say, I want to die on the stage. In one way, he did.